The test of Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán hasn't been brief on detailed information of the narcotic cartel pivot's colorful way of life. There is several of the craziest testimony so distant. A trust assassin for El Chapo stored a assassination chamber in his house on the U.S. boundary, that displayed a leak on the story to more than readily pure up following slayings. Edgar Galvin testified in January how Antonio Jag Marufo had a chamber in White's tiles. How was audio proofed so no sound comes of? In how building, not one comes of, Galvin said jurors. Galvin told his part in the organization was to smuggle arms in the U.S., so how Marufo could use them to precise the area of rivals. At the period, he was residing in El Paso, Texas, time Marufo was residing in Ciudad Juarez, fair through the US-Mexico boundary. But both of men are now in prison on gun and gun extortion. El Chapo utilized his multitude of mistresses to assist future his narcotics transactions, and his lyrics story proves it, the FBI alleges. Thanks to the Flexi Spy software program Mr. Guzmán utilized to spy on his woman, Emma Coronel, and the female in whom he had sphere, the FBI was capable to this his texts in trial. Mr. Guzmán and Ms. Coronel fawned above their daughters-in-law texts, as parents do, but several had a clearly El Chapo sensitivity. El's injuring episode of texts relayed how El Chapo fled a country house for an attack by U.S. and Mexico officials. I had to run out at 3 in the afternoon, Mr. Guzmán said his woman. I saw them knocking on the doorway following doorway, but I was capable to leap of. He later, according to reports, requested her to give him new clothing, shoes, and dark antennas colorant. Mr. Guzmán tracked about 50 human beings via duct phones and computers, on to El Chapo's former techie, Christian Rodriguez. Mr. Rodriguez said the trial El Chapo often rotated on his lover's microphones following an telephone call in them to see which they would say on him, the Everyday News story informed. One of such lovers was Agustina Cabanillas Acosta, who supposedly helping El Chapo do deals through the area. In Among Sugary Nothings, they debated narcotic shipments and non-stop turnover. The estimated pivot as well, according to reports, pay for Ms. Acosta's liposuction. The secrets of El Chapo's bold flee of a Mexico maximal safety jail in 2015 were shown by a ex-cartel connect. Proving in trial, Damaso Lopez told his lug woman and sons had been implicated of the begin to get El Chapo out of Altiplano jail. He aforementioned opened secret meetings in 2014, wherever Emma Coronel brought comprehensive instructions of her man to the plotters. A tube had to be constructed, and they, plotters, should begin to job, Ms. Coronel told. El Chapo's sons after purchased a characteristic close the jail, and the dig begun. A GPS look was imported in the jail, giver the plotters accurate company ordinates wherever El Chapo's jail cage was. The A-mile tube took months to full, and El Chapo had complained how dig was too noisy and he could listen the sound of his cage, Mr. Lopez told. He added how the specific under his lug cage had been really hard to break down via. In spite all the problems, El Chapo escaped in July 2015, galloping on a specifically tailored little bike via the tube. Yet El's hostess, Lucero Guadalupe Sanchez Lopez, showed to the trial detailed information of El Chapo's 2014 flee of Mexico Marines. While the Marines break in El Chapo's safe house, Ms. Lopez told the estimated narcotic lord took off fleeing, absolute bear. As the hostess began to cry, time proving, El Chapo's woman, Ms. Coronel, according to reports, cackled in the balcony. Fair days following his case in Ms. Lopez, El Chapo would be seized by authorities, one day once again bare, in bed in Ms. Coronel. El Chapo's well-known wastefulness stretched though to his wide gallery of weapon, the test has heard. Amongst his precious belongings were a almaz-encrusted, monogrammed gun and a O-plated AK-47. Lot of the testimony versus the suspected narco head has go of the proceedings as celebrity eyewitness, Jesus Zambada. Mr. Zambada testified how the estimated narcotic pivot had the sibling of El's cartel lead annihilated since he did not tremble Mr. Guzmán's brush. Rodolfo Fuentes had met Mr. Guzmán to do world in a cartel and mob warfare, the trial heard. While Rodolfo leftward, Chapo gave him his brush and told, "View you after, boyfriend," and Rodolfo fair leftward him permanent down there in his brush stretched, Mr. Zambada told. Mr. Fuentes and his woman were shooting and annihilated external a movie quickly subsequently. Ex-Sinaloa Lieutenant Miguel Angelic Martinez as well testified for the by the government, expressive the jury trial he one day requested El Chapo why he annihilated human beings. Or he responded me, each yours mommy's departure to cry or their mommy's departure to scream. Juan Guzmán had said the estimated narcotic lug he would be traveling, just to be spotty at a garden in the town. My compadre became irate, since he had lied to him, former cartel capo Damaso Lopez Núñez told. To do and sample out of one, El Chapo supposedly orderly him to be surveyed and dead. One secretariat, who was in him at the period, was as well annihilated. El Chapo hostess Ms. Lopez after said the trial she memorable creature in him while the news story of one's die arriving. He told of how spot on, who devotee him, they would dead, Ms. Lopez told. If they were household or female, they were departure to dead. Aide U.S. lawyer Adam Fells told in his discovery reason how El Chapo had shipped more than rather than a link of crack cocaine for each solitary man in the joint state, in fair 4 persons of his shipments. How amounts to above 328 millionth channel of crack cocaine, told the attorney. Mr. Zambada told how one day, in 1994, Mr. Guzmán gave the procedure to plunge a ship transport 20 tons of crack cocaine to avoid authorities. The trial as well heard how Mr. Guzmán one day utilized a grenade launcher for goal experience, to soften on a household feast. Mr. Zambada told El Chapo took the against tank missile launcher in him on a travel in loved ones in 2005. Several of the largest news story of evidence was how the Sinaloa cartel supposedly pay off a army of top Mexico officials to provide their narcotic industry ran swimmingly. Mr. Zambada told the drug traffickers had $50 meter, £39 meter, in protect cash for ex-Mexico Secretariat of Social Safety Garcia Moon, so how pervert commanders would be equipped to chief police force operative. Mr. Zambada told he gave the cash to Mr. Moon in briefcases complete of cash money. Mr. Moon has rejected the concoction. While ex-Mexico town mayoress Gabriel Regino was in link to be the following Secretariat of Safety, Mr. Zambada says the cartel corrupted him, too much. Mr. Regino, who is now a prof, has as well rejected the claims. Jesus Malverde has been famous as a Robin Cal type character who, myth says, tipped of the wealthy and gave to the impoverished in the previous 1900s. Mr. Martinez said the trial Mr. Guzmán was so rich, he had a individual zoo on top of his multiple properties, consisting a $10 meter, 8 pounds, bathing beach building as a boat he mentioned following oneself, Chapito. Constructed in the previous 90s, El Chapo Zoo according to reports had lions, tigers and crocodiles, as a slight boat train to ferry boat guests via it. The characteristic as well had a building, swimming pool and pong courts neighboring, Mr. Martinez told.